We've talked about this before that attitude actually matters more than the quality of attention. Oftentimes, in meditation classes or mindfulness classes, we're always kind of focusing on attention, having agency over our attention, and having a certain vividness or continuity of present awareness. And there's a certain efforting that happens with that. And there's also a certain continual evaluation process that happens with that. And in a sense, for myself at least, there's a certain rejection of what's happening, because generally I don't have continuous present awareness. Most of us don't. And when I'm aware of that, then there's the dissatisfaction about that. And then there's the not wanting of that. And then there's the trying to get present awareness. So there's a rejection of that, what's actually happening. And there's something magical about just, instead of focusing on the quality of attention or where the attention is going, of really viewing it through an attitude of just gentle care. That it doesn't matter what's happening in the moment. That whatever is happening, I'm interested. Okay. As you would to a child, right? Even if the child's having a tantrum or, behaving in ways that are unpleasant, there's still just this care. And so the attitude or the opening of the heart is a gateway, I think, to present awareness.
Yes.
Because when we soften and we open the heart and we meet something with curiosity, there is not an efforting, but there's a directing of the attention, and there's a placing of the attention on what's going on without it needing to be any particular way. This is mindfulness. And it's available to us, and it's effortless. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, because otherwise we might be thinking, well, why am I taking this class? It's because I want to feel that way, right? Or I want to have that experience. And here we are trying all of these different techniques, all of these different entryways. And what I can say is you can drop all of the techniques. And if the attitude is just that of interest and care, it's like almost automatic. You're there. So I'll use the example of the tendonitis, for example, right? It's like the attention's already going there. And so how do I meet that? Because it's painful. And so maybe I don't want to even be with the pain because it's unpleasant. So I'm trying to get out. Can I meet the pain? Can I meet the not wanting? Can I meet the wanting to get out with compassion and care? That it's so innocent to not want to be with that. And so that I'm watching not just the tendonitis, but I'm watching how I'm relating to the tendonitis. And I'm watching what I'm doing with respect to my experience with tenderness. And so it's just a reframe, right? It's a simple reframe. And the just not wanting, or the heartbreak of just the fatigue of like, this is still happening. I can't do anything about it. Meeting that sadness or meeting that heartbreak is what opens the heart even further. And then experiencing grief or experiencing anger, whatever is coming up, and still holding that and not trying to pull away, but just hold it with care, opens the heart even further. And so that we're making intimate contact with what is actually wanting to be seen. Oftentimes, repetitive things like chronic pain or like obsessive thinking, all of that is a way to point our attention towards something that wants completion. Okay. And when I mean something wanting completion, the phenomena of it fully being expressed and acknowledged and the energy moving through. And what happens is, so innocently and so justifiable, when we're in a situation that's unpleasant, we don't want to be there. That makes sense. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's unbearable. Of course, we want to pull out. And so oftentimes what happens is we pull out before that gets to fully be expressed, before the energy is able to completely move through us. We cut it off. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we generate an incompletion. We yank our attention somewhere else, or we kind of strategize and fix things and kind of keep it under control. We try to manage it. But what happens is that has not been completed. And so it's going to show up again.
Yes.
And we are going to spend a lot of energy trying to manage that. In a sense, it's a distraction. Because what I'm doing is I'm focusing on what's up here, and I'm not looking at what's down here that's leading to all of this. Mm-hmm. I want to make it clear that even though we have strategies like reframing or shifting our attention to something else, or finding the silver lining of what's going on, right? These are all coping strategies. And there's nothing wrong with that. We'll make it very clear, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that there are very wise strategies, but it still requires mindfulness to be able to discern, am I choosing this strategy or am I just going there by default? Is it just conditioned or is it just habitual? If I'm choosing it, it's because I dropped in and I did touch what was actually happening. And I discerned for myself, now is not time to make full contact. And so now I'm going to take care of myself and I'm going to divert the attention so I can get more resource and I can come back to it when I'm more resourced. Right. So I'm also not suggesting that we also make full contact with unpleasantness, that we're just bringing mindfulness to it. And just like exposure therapy, if we're dealing with something that is traumatic, it's just micro moments of touching into it and then pulling back. Right? You start on the shallow end of the pool, you don't jump into the deep end. Right? But starting to get in the habit of that is something that can take place in meditation. Because oftentimes when we're sitting with our eyes closed for any given amount of time, what happens is that a lot of things that have been managed and kept under the surface, or that are not catching our attention, because as we're moving through life and we're in action, our attention is directed at what we're doing. But when we sit quietly, all of those things that have been swept under the rug start to come to the surface. And this is the place where we can sit and just watch. And it's fascinating what will come to the surface. Some things might be from decades ago. But the body holds on to all of that. All of those incompletions are looking to be acknowledged, seen, cared for, empathized with, to reach completion. And we spend a lot of our lives wanting others to do that for us. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. We are a collective organism of different humans, and we rely on each other to be able to mirror back some of the things that we can't see because we are in our own experience. But in meditation, allowing ourselves to go even to like the discomfort, almost the threshold of discomfort without interfering, can offer small releases of that energy. And as we steep in it longer and we realize that it's not going to be the end of the world, I'm not going to die from it, as we watch, we start noticing how the things that might have been unbearable before actually dissolve. We see the impermanent nature, the transience or the ephemeral nature of phenomena. And what this does by seeing this over and over and over is it starts to build a different understanding of the world that we live in or the experiences that we have. We start to see that everything is passing, it's coming and going. And so even the things that might be the most unpleasant for me to experience, I can watch that dissolve. And it creates a faith in myself so that when I go through my life and let's say I'm in a very, very difficult place, instead of losing myself in the story of like, oh my God, this again, this is never going to go away. What am I going to do? I can have, because I've seen this over and over in my meditation, the deep understanding that it feels that way. This is the story I'm generating. I'm really attached to the story. But at the end of the day, this will pass too. And so meditation can be a place where we not only build our resilience by exposing ourselves, allowing ourselves to experience difficulty, which our culture is all about avoiding, right? We're all about enhancing even neutral experiences to make them better. We're all about intensity to feel alive. And so being able to really steep in the nuances of what appears in meditation, not only is it exposure therapy, but we start to become more refined in noticing the subtleties of states. And this training, if you will, actually starts to become involuntary as we go through our day-to-day lives. So that it's no longer just when you're meditating, it starts to happen as you go through your day and you have these moments of awakening and realizing, oh, I'm just meditating in action now. So that there is no real clear distinction anymore about what's happening on the cushion and what's happening in our day-to-day lives. And ultimately, at least this is the reason why I practice, is that I want to have present awareness continuously. I want that intimacy with all aspects of my life, even the difficult. Because in the difficulty is where I'm getting feedback of what's not working or what's off the mark. Whereas if I didn't get that feedback, it would have remained unconscious. So I can even go back to the example of the tendonitis. The tendonitis is giving me feedback that the repetitive movement that I'm doing chronically over the years is leading to tissue damage and nerve damage. That's the only way I'm going to stop doing it. Otherwise, I'll just continue to do it. And so in a sense, all of these things are just mechanisms wanting attention to be able to have us acknowledge it, for the energy to pass through, but also sometimes for behaviors to change. Because all we have really are our somatic, our body, what the body is giving us as information in our emotions. Because whatever the mind is doing, for the most part, it's speculation. And so what is accurate is actually the somatic and the emotional responses that we have. And if we want to have safety and care, a big part of that is understanding that we are built in with mechanisms that are already trying to do that for us. And that what we can do is reciprocate that by developing a relationship and attunement to what the body and the emotions are trying to show us, so that we're on the same team, so that together we are collaborating towards a life with more well-being.